The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the rhythmic tapping of Natalie Morgan's fingers against her laptop keyboard. Sunday morning light filtered through the small kitchen window, pale and watery, the kind of autumn sun that promised nothing but the cold to come. The scent of cheap coffee filled the air, bitter and strong, the only luxury she allowed herself anymore. On the counter beside her sat a stack of bills, their red letters screaming past due, past due, past due. She'd been staring at the same spreadsheet for 20 minutes, watching the numbers refuse to add up no matter how many times she rearranged them. Her phone buzzed for the 7th time that morning. Mom. Again. Natalie silenced it without looking, her jaw tight. She knew what her mother wanted. The same thing she'd wanted for 3 years now, ever since the world had collapsed around them like a house of cards in a windstorm. Status, respectability, a return to the life they'd lost when her father's business partner had emptied the accounts and disappeared into the night, leaving behind nothing but debt and a man too broken to survive it. 3 years. 3 years since the funeral. 3 years of watching her mother transform from the warm, supportive woman who'd raised her into someone Natalie barely recognized, someone obsessed with climbing back up a social ladder that Natalie had never wanted to be on in the first place. She took a sip of coffee, grimacing at the bitterness, and forced herself to look at the number at the bottom of her budget spreadsheet. Negative $1,200. And that was before her brother's tuition payment came due next month. Nathan was 19, a sophomore at State, brilliant and kind and everything their father had hoped he'd be. His scholarship applications were pending, results coming any day now, but Natalie couldn't risk waiting. If those scholarships didn't come through, she'd need to find the money somewhere. The problem was, there was nowhere left to find it. Monday morning arrived with the kind of gray drizzle that made everything feel heavier. Natalie sat at her desk in the accounting firm's open office. A maze of gray cubicles and fluorescent lights that hummed with a frequency that always gave her a headache by noon. She was good at her job, excellent even, but invisible in the way that competent people often were. Her boss knew her name, her coworkers smiled politely, and none of them really saw her at all. During her lunch break, she transferred $300 to Nathan's account, watching her own balance dip into dangerous territory. Her chest tightened. But she closed the banking app before the anxiety could fully take hold. Nathan needed books. Nathan needed to eat. Nathan needed to not worry about whether his sister could keep her promises. Their father had died believing he'd failed them. Natalie wouldn't do the same. That evening, she found herself at the coffee shop near her apartment, the small corner place that smelled like espresso and old books. It had become her refuge over the past few months. A neutral space between work and home where she could pretend, for an hour, that her life was something other than a careful balancing act between collapse and survival. She ordered her usual, black coffee with a splash of cream, and claimed her table by the window. Outside, the city moved past in blurs of umbrellas and hurried footsteps. Inside, the warmth pressed against her like a blanket she desperately needed. That's when she noticed him. He sat in the corner, a laptop open in front of him, a carpenter's tool belt slung over the back of his chair like an afterthought. Dark brown hair that looked like it had been pushed back by frustrated hands too many times, a strong jaw shadowed with stubble, and eyes the color of steel that seemed to take in everything without effort. He wore a simple gray t-shirt and worn jeans, work boots scuffed and dusty. There was something about him that felt solid in a way that nothing in Natalie's life had felt in years. She told herself not to stare. She stared anyway. Then, because the universe had a sense of humor, she stood too quickly, her bag catching on the chair. Her coffee tipped, the cup toppling in what felt like slow motion. She lunged for it, missed, and watched in horror as it arced toward her open laptop. A hand shot out, faster than should have been possible, catching the laptop and lifting it clear. Coffee splashed across the table, missing the computer by inches. Natalie stood frozen, her hand still outstretched uselessly, staring at the man who'd somehow crossed the distance between his table and hers in the space of a heartbeat. "Reflexes from catching falling tools," he said, his voice low and calm, setting her laptop safely on a dry chair. "You okay?" "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to." She grabbed napkins, trying to mop up the spreading puddle, her face burning with embarrassment. "It's just coffee." He helped her, his movements efficient and unhurried. "Your laptop's safe. That's what matters." Up close, he was even more striking. Not handsome in the polished way of the men in her mother's social circle, but real in a way that made her breath catch. His hands, she noticed, were calloused and strong, the hands of someone who built things rather than just talked about building them. "Thank you," she managed, finally meeting his eyes. Gray, she'd been right about that, but with flecks of blue she hadn't seen from across the room. "Really, that laptop has everything." "Bookkeeper?" he asked, nodding toward the spreadsheet still visible on her screen. "Accountant, you?" "I build things, fix things." A slight smile touched his mouth. "Simpler than numbers. Nothing simple about construction. Nothing simple about anything worth doing." The barista brought over more napkins and a replacement coffee on the house, giving them both a knowing smile that made Natalie's embarrassment flare fresh. But the man didn't seem to notice, or if he did, he had the grace not to show it. "Black with a splash of cream," he said, nodding at her new cup. "Good choice. Honest coffee." "As opposed to dishonest coffee?" "All those drinks with 7 ingredients and whipped cream, they're trying too hard, covering something up." He picked up his own cup, plain black. "I like things that are what they say they are." Something in his tone made her think he wasn't just talking about coffee. They cleaned up the rest of the spill in companionable silence. When the table was dry and her laptop safely stowed, Natalie expected him to return to his corner. Instead, he lingered for a moment, studying her with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable, but somehow wasn't. "See you tomorrow, accountant," he said finally, and walked back to his table. Natalie sat down slowly, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. She opened her laptop, pulled up her spreadsheets, and spent the next hour pretending to work while sneaking glances at the man in the corner. He never looked up again, absorbed in whatever he was designing, but somehow she knew he was as aware of her as she was of him. When she finally packed up to leave, she glanced back once. He was gone. His table empty, except for a coffee cup and a small napkin with 2 words written in clean, precise handwriting. "Tomorrow, then." She took the napkin home. She told herself it didn't mean anything. She put it in her pocket anyway. That night, Sunday dinner at her mother's house felt like walking into a trap. Patricia Morgan's home was a testament to the art of appearing wealthier than you were. Designer furniture bought on credit, fresh flowers that cost more than Natalie's weekly grocery budget, and a dining room table that seated 12 but usually sat only 3. "You're late," Patricia said, kissing Natalie's cheek with the kind of affection that felt performative. "Traffic." Natalie lied. Nathan was already there, sitting at the table with the careful stillness of someone trying not to draw attention. At 19, he had their father's eyes and their mother's cheekbones, and the exhausted look of a college student carrying too much weight. He gave Natalie a look that clearly said, "Brace yourself." Dinner was salmon with asparagus, expensive and carefully plated. Patricia talked about her book club, about the charity luncheon she'd attended, about anything and everything except the fact that she was drowning in the same financial quicksand as her daughter. The difference was, Patricia still believed the right marriage could be a life raft. "I have wonderful news," Patricia announced as dessert appeared, her voice bright with the kind of forced enthusiasm that made Natalie's stomach drop. "Julian Prescott has expressed interest in seeing you again." Natalie's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "What?" "Julian, Catherine Prescott's son. You remember him, darling. You met at the Harrington Foundation Gala 2 years ago." She remembered. Tall, blonde, perfectly polished Julian Prescott, with his Yale degree and his political aspirations, and his eyes that looked at her like she was a balance sheet to be evaluated. "He's recently divorced," Patricia continued, as if this were a selling point. "And Catherine mentioned to me that he's looking for someone appropriate. Someone with the right background. Mom, he's perfect, Natalie. Successful, connected, from a good family. This could be exactly what we need. What we need, not what Natalie needed. What the family needed. What Patricia's desperate scramble back to respectability needed. I'm not interested in Julian Prescott. You haven't even given him a chance. I don't need to give him a chance. I'm not looking to date anyone right now. Patricia's expression hardened, the warm mother mask slipping to reveal the steel underneath. Your brother's tuition is due next month, or have you forgotten? The table went silent. Nathan looked down at his plate, his jaw tight. Natalie felt the familiar guilt sink its claws in deep. That's not fair, she said quietly. Fair? Nothing about this situation is fair. Your father left us with nothing, Natalie. Nothing but debt and whispers. Do you know what it's like? Holding your head up in this city when everyone knows you've fallen. When everyone's waiting to see if you'll fall further. So our solution is to sell me off to the first interested bidder? Don't be dramatic. I'm simply saying that Julian is a good man from a good family, and you could do far worse. He's coming to dinner next week. I already arranged it. The room tilted. You what? I told Catherine we'd love to have him over. Next Friday, 7 o'clock. You had no right. I have every right. I'm your mother. And after everything I sacrificed, everything I've done to keep this family together, you owe me this. The words hung in the air like poison. Nathan wouldn't look at either of them. Patricia's face was flushed with emotion and wine, and Natalie felt something inside her crack, a fissure in the foundation she'd been carefully maintaining for 3 years. I'm already seeing someone. The words came out before she'd consciously decided to say them. Patricia's eyes widened. Nathan's head snapped up. What? Patricia's voice was sharp. I'm seeing someone. It's serious. Very serious. Who? You haven't mentioned anyone. Natalie's mind raced. I didn't want to say anything until I was sure. But it's real. We've been together for 2 months. Patricia's eyes narrowed with suspicion. What's his name? Owen. Owen Fletcher. Fletcher? I don't know any Fletchers. He's not from your circle. He's a contractor. He builds things. The disdain on Patricia's face was immediate and unconcealed. A contractor. Natalie, be serious. I am serious. Then bring him to the Prescott Charity Gala next month. If he's real, if this relationship is real, prove it. Natalie's heart hammered against her ribs. The Prescott Charity Gala was the social event of the season. 200 of the city's wealthiest and most influential people in one room. It was Patricia's chance to reestablish herself, and now it was Natalie's trap. Fine, she heard herself say. We'll be there. Patricia smiled, but it was the smile of a woman who'd just played a winning card. Wonderful. I look forward to meeting him. Natalie left shortly after, Nathan walking her to her car. Nat, he said quietly. Who's Owen? Someone I met. It's complicated. Does he know you just volunteered him for society's version of gladiatorial combat? Not yet. Nathan hugged her, and she held on tight, breathing in the familiar scent of his cologne and laundry detergent. You don't have to do this. The scholarship results should come any day, and I can take a semester off if I need to. You're not taking a semester off. Don't even think about it. He pulled back, studying her face. Just be careful, okay? Mom's desperate, and desperate people make dangerous choices. She drove home through rain-slicked streets, her hands shaking on the wheel. When she reached her apartment, she sat in her car for a long moment, staring at the building's weathered brick facade. Then she drove to the coffee shop. It was late, past 9, but the lights were still on. Through the window, she could see him. Owen, the stranger with the steel-gray eyes and the calloused hands. He was bent over his laptop, the blue light illuminating his face in the dim cafe. This was insane. She'd spoken to him once. She didn't even know his last name, but desperation had its own logic, and right now, Natalie was drowning. She pushed open the door. The bell chimed. He looked up, and something shifted in his expression when he saw her. Surprise, maybe, or recognition of something inevitable. Natalie crossed the small space and sat down across from him without asking permission. This is insane, she said. I don't even know you. Owen closed his laptop slowly, giving her his full attention. But I need someone to pretend to be my boyfriend for one night. One event. I'll pay you. Silence stretched between them. His face was unreadable, but his eyes never left hers. What kind of event? He asked finally. The kind where my life depends on being convincing. He studied her for a long moment, taking in the desperation she couldn't quite hide, the fear beneath her careful composure. Then he leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. Tell me everything. 3 days later, Natalie stood in her small apartment, watching the minutes tick down to 7 o'clock, with the kind of dread usually reserved for root canals and tax audits. She'd spent the past 72 hours trying to convince herself this was a terrible idea, that she should call the whole thing off, that asking a stranger to pretend to be her boyfriend was the kind of decision that ended in disaster or true crime documentaries, but she hadn't called it off, and now Owen Fletcher was about to walk through her door and into the elaborate lie she'd constructed. The apartment felt painfully small suddenly. A studio with a kitchen that was really just a corner, a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in, and a living space dominated by a second-hand couch and a bookshelf made of cinder blocks and reclaimed wood. Budget spreadsheets covered her kitchen table, photos of her family clustered on every available surface, as if she could summon them closer through sheer quantity. A dream board hung on her refrigerator, covered in magazine cutouts of cozy cafes and independent bookstores, the business she'd someday build if she ever stopped drowning long enough to swim. The buzzer rang at exactly 7, punctual. She liked that. "Come up," she said into the intercom, her voice steadier than she felt. "Third floor, door at the end." She listened to his footsteps on the stairs, heavy and measured, and tried to remember how to breathe normally. When she opened the door, Owen stood in the hallway with his hands in his pockets, wearing the same worn jeans and simple jacket he'd had on at the coffee shop. He looked around her apartment with the kind of attention that made her self-conscious, taking in the organized chaos. A carefully budgeted life on display. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. He entered and the space seemed to shrink further. He was taller than she'd realized, broader, the kind of physical presence that filled a room without trying. He moved to her kitchen table, studying the lists she'd made, the budgets, the family photos. "Coffee?" she offered. "Please." She made 2 cups, grateful for something to do with her hands. When she turned back, he was sitting at her small table, looking oddly comfortable in her mismatched chairs. "So," Owen said, accepting the mug she offered, "tell me about this event." Natalie sat across from him, wrapping her hands around her own cup for warmth. "The Prescott Charity Gala. It's in 4 weeks. Black tie, about 200 people, all of them rich, and most of them terrible. And you need a date because I told my mother I was seeing someone, to get her to stop trying to set me up with Julian Prescott." She paused. The Prescott hosting the gala. Owen's eyebrow lifted slightly. Awkward. That's one word for it. She took a breath. "I know this sounds insane. It is insane. But my mother lost everything when my father died 3 years ago. His business partner embezzled, left us with nothing but debt. Dad had a heart attack from the stress. And Mom became obsessed with getting back the life we lost. And you're the ticket back. Apparently." Natalie stared into her coffee. "She thinks if I marry someone like Julian, someone established and wealthy, it'll fix everything. Restore the family name. Make us respectable again. But you don't want Julian. I don't want anyone my mother picked out like I'm a piece in a chess game." She met his eyes. "I want to make my own choices, live my own life. But I also need to keep my brother in school, keep the bills paid, and not completely destroy my relationship with my mother. So, I lied. And now I need help maintaining that lie for one night." Owen was quiet for a moment, studying her face. "What's in it for me?" $500. It's all I can spare right now, but I don't want your money." Natalie blinked. "Then why did you agree to hear me out?" "Because you look desperate, and I know what that feels like." He set down his cup. "But I have a counteroffer." "Okay. Your books, the spreadsheets on your table. You're an accountant, right?" "Yes. My contractor business. The bookkeeping is a mess. I'm good at building things, terrible at tracking invoices and expenses. Help me with that, and we'll call it even." It was so unexpected, say practical, that Natalie almost laughed. "You want accounting services in exchange for fake dating? Seems fair. We both get something we need." She studied him, this stranger, who'd somehow agreed to her insane plan without hesitation or judgment. "Why are you really doing this?" Owen's expression shifted, something vulnerable flickering across his face before he locked it away. "Let's just say I've seen what happens when people feel tracked, when they think they have to be someone they're not to survive. It doesn't end well." There was a story there, pain beneath the surface, but Natalie didn't push. Instead, she extended her hand across the table. "Deal." His hand engulfed hers, warm and calloused and solid. "Deal. Now we need to get our story straight." For the next hour, they built their fake relationship like architects constructing a building. How they met, the coffee shop, which was true. First date, A walk in the park after that initial meeting, which wasn't. How long they'd been together? 2 months. Why they hadn't told anyone. They wanted to keep it private, make sure it was real before going public. Favorite food? Owen asked, writing notes on the back of one of her budget sheets. Thai, anything with peanut sauce. Allergies? Shellfish. You? None. I eat like a construction worker. Which you are. Which I am. He smiled, and it transformed his face, made him look younger and less guarded. What about your family, besides your mother and brother? Just them. Dad's gone. Mom's parents died when I was young. It's just us three now. She paused. What about you? One sister, Devon. She's 26, works at an art gallery, worries too much. Parents? Something shuddered in his expression. My mother died when I was 21. My father and I don't speak. I'm sorry. Don't be. Some things are better left alone. He changed the subject smoothly. The gala, what's the dress code exactly? Black tie, which means tuxedo for you, formal gown for me. I'll need to borrow a suit. Owen, I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. He pulled out his phone. I'll need your number, and your address obviously, but I have that now. She gave him her number. Watching as he saved it under Nat. No one called her that. It felt intimate, like he was already creating his own version of her. One more thing, Owen said, standing to leave. This thing with your mother. The way she's pushing you, that's not okay. She's just trying to help. Is she? Or is she trying to fix her own life through yours? The words hit harder than they should have, probably because they were true. Natalie looked away, uncomfortable with how clearly this stranger could see her life. I should go, Owen said, heading for the door. But Nat? Yeah? When we're at that gala, and everyone's judging us, judging you for being with me, you need to trust me. Can you do that? She thought about it. About this man she barely knew, who was somehow willing to walk into a lion's den for her. Yes, I can trust you. Good. He opened the door, paused. See you Saturday. We should do a test run before the main event. Test run? Dinner, somewhere public but not too crowded. We need to look comfortable together. After he left, Natalie sat in her quiet apartment, staring at her phone where his contact information glowed on the screen. This was really happening. She'd enlisted a stranger in an elaborate deception, and somehow, impossibly, it felt like the first honest thing she'd done in years. Saturday afternoon, Owen texted her an address. Small Italian place in her neighborhood, the kind with checkered tablecloths and candles in wine bottles. When she arrived, he was already there, sitting at a corner table, and her breath caught at the sight of him. He'd cleaned up, wearing dark jeans and a button-down shirt that fit him perfectly, his hair still slightly damp from a shower. You look nice, he said as she sat down. So do you, they ordered, and conversation flowed easier than it should have between two people staging a performance. He told her about the bookshelf he was building for a client, custom walnut with hidden compartments. She told him about the small business owner she'd helped that week, a woman starting a bakery who'd been drowning in receipts and hope. You like helping people build things, Owen observed. I like helping people build dreams. There's a difference between working for a corporation and working for someone trying to create something meaningful. Is that what you want? Your own firm? Natalie hesitated, then decided honesty was easier than more lies. Eventually, small business accounting. Artists, local shops, makers, people who need help but can't afford the big firms. That's a good dream. It's expensive, and risky, and probably foolish. Most good things are. The waiter brought their food, and as they ate, Natalie noticed the older couple at the next table, watching them with soft smiles. They looked like they were seeing young love, something sweet and genuine. The irony wasn't lost on her. Owen noticed too. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. We're being watched, I know. Should we give them a show? Before she could answer, he took her hand fully, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. It was such a simple gesture, barely intimate, but Natalie felt it everywhere. His hand was warm, slightly rough, and the careful attention in the movement made her stomach flip. How's that? He asked quietly. Convincing. They finished dinner with their hands linked on the table, and when they left, Owen walked her home. The autumn evening had turned cold, and he offered her his jacket without asking. It smelled like cedar and sawdust and something indefinably him. At her building's entrance, they stopped. Street lights cast long shadows across the pavement. Owen stood close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. "That went well," Natalie said. "It did. We're good at this. At pretending, at being together." The distinction felt important, dangerous. Natalie looked up at him, at the way the light caught in his gray eyes, and wondered what it would be like if this were real. If this careful, kind man were actually hers. "Owen," she started. Not sure what she wanted to say, her phone rang. "Mom." The name flashed across the screen like a warning. "I should take this," Natalie said reluctantly. "I'll wait." She answered, and Patricia's voice came through sharp with excitement. "Darling, wonderful news. Mrs. Wellington saw you at dinner tonight. She called me immediately. She said you looked absolutely smitten with your young man." Natalie's heart sank. Mrs. Wellington was one of Patricia's oldest friends. Gossip with connections to everyone who mattered. Of course she'd been there. Of course she'd seen them. She also said he's very handsome, if a bit rough around the edges. "What does he do again?" "He's a contractor, Mom. I told you." "Yes, well," Mrs. Wellington seemed charmed, even if she did mention his clothes were rather casual. A pause. "The Prescotts are hosting a weekend at their Hamptons estate in 2 weeks. They've invited our family. You, me, your brother. And they specifically requested you bring Owen. Catherine wants to meet him." The world tilted. "Mom, I don't think this is perfect, Natalie. A whole weekend to show them you've moved on from Julian. That you're happy, settled. A weekend is very different from one night. Which is why it's the perfect test. If this relationship is real, a weekend shouldn't be a problem. Should it?" It was a trap, and they both knew it. But Natalie couldn't refuse without admitting the whole thing was a lie. "Fine, we'll be there." "Wonderful, I'll send you the details. Oh, and darling, make sure Owen has appropriate clothes. The Prescotts have standards." Patricia hung up. Natalie stood frozen, staring at her phone. "What happened?" Owen asked. She looked at him. At this man who'd agreed to one night, and felt the weight of what she was about to ask settle in her chest. "That test run? We're going to need a bigger one." The construction site smelled like fresh lumber and ambition. Natalie picked her way across the uneven ground, past stacks of materials and power tools, following the sound of a saw cutting through wood. She found Owen in what would eventually be someone's living room, bent over a piece of custom shelving, his shirt damp with sweat despite the autumn chill, sawdust clinging to his forearms. He didn't hear her approach over the noise. She watched him work for a moment, the precision in his movements, the way his hands moved across the wood like he was reading something written in the grain. There was artistry in it, she realized. This wasn't just construction. This was creation. When he finally turned off the saw and looked up, surprise flickered across his face, followed by something that might have been pleasure. "Natalie, everything okay?" She held up the paper bag she'd brought. "Brought lunch. Peace offering." Owen set down his tools and joined her outside, where they sat on a stack of lumber, the city sprawling out below them. She'd brought sandwiches from the deli near her apartment, chips, 2 bottles of water. Simple food that tasted better than it should in the clear afternoon air. "So," Owen said after a few bites, "what are you offering peace for?" "For what I'm about to ask." Natalie took a breath. "That weekend at the Hamptons. It's not just a dinner. It's 3 days, Friday through Sunday, at the Prescott estate, with my mother, my brother, and about 30 of the wealthiest, most judgmental people in the city." Owen chewed thoughtfully, his expression unreadable. "That's a significant escalation." "I know. And I know this isn't what you signed up for. If you want out, I understand. I'll figure something else out. Tell my mother you got sick, or we broke up, or I'm in." She stopped mid-sentence. "What?" "I said I'm in." He met her eyes. "But I need to tell you something first. And after I do, if you want to back out, that's your choice." Dread pooled in Natalie's stomach. "Okay. You remember when I said my father and I don't speak?" "Yes. My father is Richard Harrington." The name hit her like cold water. Richard Harrington, the real estate mogul whose name was on half the buildings in the city. The man who'd turned inherited wealth into an empire. One of the most powerful people in their world. "Harrington," she repeated slowly. "As in Harrington Properties. I'm Owen Fletcher Harrington." I dropped the last name when I was 21, started using my mother's maiden name, walked away from the whole thing. Natalie stood abruptly, the sandwich forgotten. You're telling me you're a billionaire's son? I gave it up. You can't just give up being a Harrington. I did. Owen's voice was firm. I took nothing from him except my mother's inheritance, which I put in trust for charity. I built my contracting business from scratch. I live in a modest apartment in Brooklyn. I drive a 15-year-old truck. The only thing I kept was my mother's furniture designs. He paused. And the knowledge of how that world works. Natalie's mind raced, recalibrating everything. The way he'd agreed so easily to her plan. His comfort with the idea of the Prescott Gala. Careful way he'd asked about her family situation. You let me offer you money, she said quietly. I turned it down. You let Mrs. Wellington and my mother think you were just some contractor. I am just some contractor. Owen. Natalie, listen to me. He stood, facing her. My mother came from nothing, married into wealth, spent 20 years being looked down on by people like Catherine Prescott. People who smiled to her face and mocked her behind closed doors. She was miserable, trapped. And when she died, everyone called it an accident. But I know better. His voice cracked on the last words, raw pain breaking through his careful control. She took pills. Too many pills. Because living in that world, being judged every day, for not being born into the right family, it broke something in her. He looked at Natalie directly. So when you sat down in that coffee shop and asked for help, when I saw that same desperation in your eyes, I said yes, because nobody helped her. And I can't save her. But maybe I can help you. Natalie felt tears prick her eyes. I'm so sorry. Don't be. Just understand why I walked away. And why I'm still willing to walk back in if it means you don't end up like she did. She moved closer, driven by instinct, and took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, strong and steady. Those people at the Hamptons, she said, they're going to look down on you, judge you, say terrible things. I know. I grew up with them. I know exactly how they operate. And you're still willing to do this? For one weekend, to help you stay free? Yes. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. But you need to know what you're getting into too. When they find out who I really am, and eventually they will, it's going to complicate things. Then we don't tell them. You're Owen Fletcher, contractor. That's the truth, just not the whole truth. And you're okay with that? With lying? Natalie thought about her mother's manipulation, about Julian Prescott's calculating interest, about the way her entire life had become a performance. I'm okay with choosing which truths to share. There's a difference. They stood there, hands linked, the autumn sun warm on their faces. Around them, the construction site hummed with potential, the skeleton of something being built from nothing. Okay, Owen said finally. Then we do this right. 3 days in the Hamptons means we need to be convincing, really convincing. What does that mean? It means they'll expect us to share a room. Heat flooded Natalie's face. Oh, I'll take the couch, obviously, but we need to look comfortable together. Like we've been doing this for 2 months. He squeezed her hand gently. Which means we need to practice. Practice what exactly? Being a couple, in public, touching, talking. All the small intimacies that make a relationship real. The word intimacies hung in the air between them, loaded with implication. When do we start? Natalie asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Now. Owen tugged her hand, pulling her closer. Tell me something real, something you've never told anyone. Why? Because couples know each other's secrets. The real ones, not just the surface stuff. Natalie hesitated, then decided to trust him. I was the one who introduced my father to his business partner, the one who stole everything. I met him at a networking event, thought he seemed trustworthy, suggested Dad consider him for a partnership. So in a way, everything that happened, my father's death, my mother's obsession, my brother's struggles, it's my fault. Owen's expression softened. It's not your fault. You couldn't have known. But I should have. I'm an accountant. I should have seen the red flags. You were 24 and trying to help your father. That's not a crime. He pulled her closer, until they were standing face to face, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his gray eyes. Now me, something real. Okay. I design furniture, custom pieces, beautiful things that nobody's ever seen because I'm too afraid to show anyone. Why? Because what if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? My father built an empire. My mother never got to build anything. And me? I make tables and chairs in my spare time and tell myself someday I'll be brave enough to try. I want to see them, Natalie said softly. What? Your designs. I want to see them. Owen studied her face, searching for mockery or pity, and finding neither. Slowly, he pulled out his phone, swiped through photos, and handed it to her. The images took her breath away. A dining table with clean lines and hidden drawers. A bookshelf that curved like a wave. A bed frame that looked like it was floating. Each piece was elegant and simple and absolutely stunning. Owen, these are incredible. You really think so? I know so. These aren't just furniture, they're art. Something in his expression cracked open, vulnerable and raw. Nobody's ever said that before. Then nobody's been paying attention. They stood there, his phone between them, displaying his secret dreams, and Natalie realized they'd crossed some invisible line. This wasn't just fake dating practice anymore. This was real people sharing real pain and real hope. We should go, Owen said finally, his voice rough. Dinner tomorrow? My place? I'll cook, and we can work on our backstory more. You cook? I'm a man of many talents, accountant. The next evening, Natalie took the subway to Brooklyn, following Owen's directions to a neighborhood she'd never been to before. His building was old but well-maintained. The kind of place where artists and teachers and people building real lives lived. His apartment was on the 4th floor, and when he opened the door, the smell of garlic and tomatoes wafted out. Come in, he said, and she stepped into his world. The apartment was small but carefully arranged. Exposed brick walls, hardwood floors worn smooth by decades of footsteps. And everywhere, evidence of his craft. A coffee table he'd clearly made himself. Bookshelves with perfect joints. A kitchen counter with a cutting board that was a work of art. This is beautiful, Natalie said, turning slowly. It's home. Owen stirred something on the stove. Pasta okay? It's about all I can make that doesn't come from a can. They ate at his small table, and it felt shockingly domestic. Comfortable. Like they'd done this 100 times before instead of just once. They talked about everything and nothing. Books they'd read, places they'd never been. Dreams they'd abandoned, and ones they still held close. Tell me about the Hamptons, Owen said as they cleaned up. What should I expect? Judgment. Lots of it. My mother will be on her best behavior, trying to impress. My brother will be uncomfortable, and the Prescotts will test us, especially Catherine. She's the kind of woman who sees other people as chess pieces. And Julian? He'll be there, probably confused about why I'm bringing someone else. Owen's jaw tightened slightly. Does he know it's fake? No one knows except us, and we need to keep it that way. They moved to his couch, sitting closer than necessary, practicing the casual touches that couples shared. His arm around her shoulders, her hand on his knee. Small gestures that shouldn't have felt significant but somehow did. When we're there, Owen said quietly, and someone says something cruel about me, about my background or my job, don't defend me. What? Why not? Because I can handle it. And if you jump to my defense, it'll look like you're ashamed, like you know they're right to judge. He turned to face her. But if you stay calm, if you act like their opinion doesn't matter, because you know my worth, that's more powerful than any defense. That's very strategic. I learned from the best. My mother never defended herself. She just lived her truth and let them choke on it. Natalie studied his face, the strength there, the old pain that had shaped him. She'd be proud of you, walking away, building something real. Maybe, or maybe she'd think I was a coward for running. You didn't run. You chose differently. There's a difference. Owen's hand came up, hesitating near her face, before gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. You have sawdust in your hair. No, I don't. I know. His voice dropped. I just wanted to touch you. The admission hung between them, honest and dangerous. Natalie's breath caught. They were so close now, close enough that she could see the exact moment his gaze dropped to her lips. Close enough to feel the tension thrumming through him, the same tension coiling tight in her own chest. Nat, he whispered. Yes? This stopped being fake for me about 5 minutes after you spilled that coffee. Before she could respond, before she could process what that meant, his phone rang. The harsh sound shattered the moment. Owen pulled back, checking the screen, and something in his expression shifted. I need to take this, It's Devin. He stepped into the other room, and Natalie sat on the couch, her heart racing, her skin still tingling from his almost touch. Through the wall, she could hear his voice, low and concerned. When he returned, his face was pale. "Everything okay?" she asked. "My father had a heart attack. He's in the hospital." Owen ran a hand through his hair. "Devin says he's asking for me. You should go." "I should, but—" "Owen, family is family. Even complicated family. Go." He looked at her, something desperate in his eyes. "Come with me." "What?" "Come with me. Please, I can't do this alone." "Of course," Natalie said without hesitation. "Of course I'll come." They grabbed their coats and headed for the door. In the hallway, Owen stopped, turned to her. "When we get there, you're going to find out everything. My real name, my real life, the whole truth." "I don't care about any of that. You might." His hand found hers, held tight. "But please don't leave." "I won't," Natalie promised. "Whatever happens, I'm here." They took a cab through the city, toward the hospital, toward the truth, toward a world Natalie had only glimpsed from the outside. Owen's hand never left hers, and she held on tight, an anchor for a man who'd spent years adrift. When they pulled up to the hospital's private entrance, she saw the photographers waiting, the black cars, the security. This wasn't the public hospital she'd imagined. This was where power went to recover. Owen helped her out of the cab, his touch gentle but firm. "Ready?" he asked. Natalie looked at the life he'd walked away from, the world he was about to re-enter, and squeezed his hand. "Together," she said. "Together," he agreed. And they walked through the doors, leaving behind the simple lie they'd constructed, and stepping into something far more complicated. Something that felt dangerously close to truth. The hospital waiting room was all polished marble and hushed voices, the kind of place where even grief wore designer clothes. Natalie sat on a leather chair that probably cost more than her monthly rent, watching Owen pace near the windows overlooking the city. He'd been silent since they arrived, his jaw tight, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. A woman burst through the double doors, blonde hair in a messy pixie cut, green eyes wild with worry. She stopped short when she saw Owen, relief flooding her face. "You came," she breathed, crossing the distance to throw her arms around him. "Of course I came." Owen held her tight. "How is he?" "Stable. Angry that you're here, but stable." She pulled back, seeming to notice Natalie for the first time. "And you brought someone." "Devin, this is Natalie. Natalie, my sister Devin." Devin's sharp gaze took in their joined hands. The way Owen stood slightly in front of Natalie, protective. A slow smile spread across her face. "You're real." "I'm sorry?" Natalie said. Owen's been mysteriously unavailable for weeks, smiling at his phone. "I thought he'd finally lost it." Devin extended her hand. "It's good to meet you. Anyone who can make my brother smile like an idiot is worth meeting." "Devin," Owen warned. "What?" "It's true." She turned back to Natalie. "You know who he really is, right? Owen Fletcher Harrington III, heir to the Harrington fortune, biggest idiot on the eastern seaboard for walking away from billions." "I know," Natalie said quietly. "And you're still here. Interesting." Devin's expression turned serious. "Dad's in room 412. He's been asking for you for the past hour. The doctors say the attack was severe, but he's going to survive. Might need surgery, might not. They're monitoring." Owen nodded, his face unreadable. "I should go see him." "We should," Natalie corrected, squeezing his hand. They walked through sterile corridors that smelled as antiseptic and expensive flowers, past nurses who nodded respectfully at Owen, clearly recognizing him despite his years away. At room 412, Owen paused, his hand on the door. "Last chance to run," he said to Natalie. "Not running." He pushed open the door. Richard Harrington lay in the hospital bed, looking smaller than a man of his reputation should. Tubes and monitors attached to him like tethers keeping him earthbound. But his eyes were sharp when they fixed on Owen, and his voice, though weak, carried the same authority Natalie had heard in news interviews. "You came." "Devin called. She said you asked for me." "I did." Richard's gaze shifted to Natalie. "And you brought the girl from the gala, the one Catherine Prescott called about." Natalie's stomach dropped. Owen's hand tightened on hers. "Catherine called you?" Owen asked, furious. "Said you made a spectacle, defended some accountant against Julian Prescott." A slight smile touched Richard's lips. I told her it was about time someone put that pompous fool in his place. Dad, sit down, both of you. I'm not dead yet, and I have things to say. They sat in the visitors' chairs, and Richard studied them with the kind of attention that had built empires and crushed competitors. What's your name, girl? Natalie Morgan. Morgan, any relation to James Morgan? The name of her father hit like a physical blow. He was my father. He died 3 years ago. I heard. Bad business with that partner of his. You have my condolences. Richard shifted in the bed, wincing. Your mother is Patricia, correct? Calls herself? Elf, a philanthropist now. She does charity work, yes. She's desperate to reclaim her social standing, uses you as currency. It wasn't a question. And you, being a good daughter, are playing along with an elaborate charade involving my son. Natalie felt the color drain from her face. Beside her, Owen went very still. Dad, Owen started. Don't insult my intelligence, Owen. I've watched you avoid this world for 10 years. You don't just waltz back in for a girl you barely know, unless there's more to the story. He coughed, pressed a button for water. The question is, what's the story? Silence stretched between them, thick with tension and unspoken truths. Then Owen spoke, his voice steady. The story is that Natalie needed help. Her mother was pressuring her into a marriage she didn't want, so I agreed to pretend to be her boyfriend. To give her breathing room. And what do you get out of it? The satisfaction of preventing someone else from being trapped the way Mom was. The words landed like stones in still water. Richard's expression shifted, pain flickering across his features that had nothing to do with his heart. Your mother made her own choices. Did she? Or did she feel like she had no other option? Owen. Richard's voice hardened. Don't rewrite history because you're angry. I'm not angry, I'm honest, which is more than this family usually manages. Natalie stood abruptly. I should give you two privacy. No. Both Harrington men spoke simultaneously. Richard continued. Stay. If you're involved with my son, even in this ridiculous charade, you should know what you're dealing with. He turned back to Owen. I'm stepping down. The board approved it yesterday, right before this happened. You're taking over, all of it. Owen's face went white. No. Yes, it's done. The lawyers have the papers. Devon gets her trust fund and a seat on the board, but the company goes to you. As it should have 10 years ago. I don't want it. What you want is irrelevant. What the company needs is a Harrington who gives a damn about something other than profit margins. That's you, whether you like it or not. I gave this up. I walked away. And I'm bringing you back. The prodigal son returns. The press will love it. Richard's breathing grew labored. You think you can keep living in that Brooklyn apartment, playing contractor, pretending you're not who you are? You're a Harrington. That's in your blood, your bones, your DNA. You can't run from it forever. Owen stood, his control fracturing. Watch me. He strode out of the room. Natalie hesitated, looking at the old man in the bed, who'd just blown up his son's carefully constructed life. Go after him, Richard said. And girl, Natalie? Yes. Whatever this started as, it's becoming something else. I've been watching people lie for 60 years. I know the difference between performance and truth. He settled back into his pillows. The question is, do you? Natalie found Owen in a small courtyard garden on the hospital's 3rd floor, standing in the cold night air without a jacket, his hands braced on the railing like he was holding himself up. Owen, she said softly. He can't do this. He can't just decide my life for me. Can't he? Legally? I mean, yes, I never fully divested. I couldn't, technically. The company structure doesn't allow it. I thought I was free, but I was just on a leash I'd convinced myself was long enough to forget about. Natalie moved beside him, close enough for their shoulders to touch. What do you want to do? I want to build furniture. I want to live in my apartment. I want to be Owen Fletcher, not Owen Harrington. He turned to face her. But if I refuse, hundreds of employees lose jobs. Projects get canceled. My father's life work crumbles. And I become exactly what he always said I was. Selfish. A coward. A disappointment. You're not any of those things. Aren't I? I ran. 10 years ago, instead of fighting to change things from the inside, I ran. And my mother was still here. Still trapped. Still alone. Owen, you can't save people who don't want to be saved. But I could have tried harder. Been stronger. Something. His voice cracked. And now here I am. Being handed everything I rejected. And I don't know if I can walk away again. Not when it means other people suffer. Natalie understood, suddenly and completely, what this was really about. Owen had spent 10 years punishing himself for his mother's death, for not being able to save her. And his father had just handed him the perfect prison, wrapped up as responsibility and legacy. "You don't have to decide tonight," she said. "No, just by the end of the week. And in the meantime, I'm supposed to show up at the Hamptons, pretend to be a simple contractor, and let people like Catherine Prescott look down on me. When they find out who I really am, it'll be everywhere. The media will have a field day. Then we don't go." Owen looked at her, really looked at her. "Yes, we do. Owen, you need this, Nat. You need to prove to your mother that you can make your own choices, that you're not property to be traded for social standing." He straightened, some of his composure returning. "And I need to prove to myself that I can walk into that world and walk back out again. That I'm not my father, not trapped by his choices." "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm going anyway." He managed a small smile. "Besides, we've been practicing. It'd be a shame to waste all that fake dating expertise." Devin appeared in the doorway. "Dad's asking for you again, Owen. And Natalie, he wants to talk to you too. Alone." Owen looked at Natalie questioningly. She nodded. "Go, I'll be fine." He squeezed her hand and left with Devin. Natalie steeled herself and walked back into Richard Harrington's room. The old man watched her enter with calculating eyes. "Sit," he commanded. She sat. "My son is in love with you," Richard said bluntly. "He doesn't know it yet, or he's lying to himself, but I know my son. And that look on his face when he watches you, that's not fake. Mr. Harrington, let me finish. You're in over your head. This started as a simple arrangement, but it's becoming complicated. And when Owen takes over the company, if he takes it over, the scrutiny on him will be intense. Every relationship will be examined. Every person in his life will be investigated. Are you prepared for that?" "I don't know," Natalie said honestly. "At least you're honest." He studied her. "What do you want from my son?" "Nothing. I asked for his help with a problem. He agreed. That's all. And if it becomes more than that," Natalie met his gaze directly, "then we'll figure it out. Together. But that's between Owen and me, not you." A slow smile spread across Richard's face. "Good. You have a spine. He needs that. God knows his mother had one, even when this family tried to break it." He pressed the call button. "Go. You have a weekend in the Hamptons to prepare for. My advice? Don't let them smell fear. People like the Prescotts are sharks. They only attack if they think you're wounded. And am I wounded? We all are, girl. The question is whether we let it define us." Natalie left the room with those words echoing in her head. She found Owen and Devin in the hallway, talking quietly. "Ready to go?" Owen asked. "Yes, but Owen, there's something we need to do first." The next day, they went shopping. Not to the designer boutiques Patricia would have insisted on, but to a small tailor shop in a neighborhood that smelled like garlic and fresh bread. The owner was an old man who knew Owen by name, who smiled when they walked in. "Owen, it's been too long, and you brought a beautiful woman, finally." "Marco, I need your help. We have an event this weekend. Very formal, very judgmental people." "Say no more." Marco turned to Natalie with a craftsman's eye. "You need armor, yes, something that makes you feel strong, not like costume." "Exactly," Natalie breathed. Marco pulled fabric, draped it over her shoulders, muttered in Italian while he measured. An hour later, Natalie stood in front of a mirror, wearing a dress the color of deep emeralds. It wasn't flashy or revealing. It was elegant, simple, with clean lines that made her look powerful rather than decorated. "That one," Owen said from behind her, his voice rough. She met his eyes in the mirror. "You're sure? It's not designer. Your father's world. We'll hate that it's not designer." "Exactly." He moved closer, and Marco discreetly disappeared into the back. "You look like yourself. Just more." "More what?" "More everything. More confident, more beautiful, more ready to take on the world." His hands settled on her shoulders, warm through the fabric. "More mine." The possessiveness in his voice sent heat flooding through her. In the mirror, they looked like a couple. A real couple. The kind that finished each other's sentences and knew each other's coffee orders and had a future that stretched beyond one weekend of pretending. "Owen," she whispered. "What are we doing?" "I don't know, but I don't want to stop." Marco reappeared, beaming. "Perfect. I'll have it ready by Thursday." And Owen, you'll need a suit. I have one. No, you need one that fits this. He gestured to them together. Trust me. They left the shop hand in hand and spent the rest of the week in a strange limbo between real and fake. They met for coffee every morning, had dinner at her apartment or his 3 times, created their fake history with such detail it started to feel like memory. The first kiss under the bridge in the rain. The night she fell asleep on his couch watching old movies. The morning he brought her breakfast when she was stressed about work. None of it was real. All of it felt true. Thursday evening, Owen picked her up for what he called a final dress rehearsal. They drove to a small lookout point overlooking the ocean. The same view they'd have from the Hamptons this weekend, but without the audience. Tomorrow, we go into the lion's den, Owen said, cutting the engine. Tomorrow we perform. Is that all this is? Performance? Natalie turned to face him in the darkening truck cab. I don't know anymore. Is it for you? No, he reached over. Tucked hair behind her ear, with fingers that trembled slightly. It stopped being performance the first night, when you sat at my kitchen table and told me about your father. When you held my hand in the hospital. When you looked at my furniture designs like they mattered. They do matter. So do you. He leaned closer, and Natalie's breath caught. When we're there, in that house with all those people, I need you to know something. What? Whatever happens, whatever they say, whatever comes next with my father's company, this, right now, you and me, this is the only real thing in my life. They were inches apart now, the air between them charged with everything unsaid. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. She could feel his breath, smell sawdust and soap, and something uniquely him. Nat, he whispered. Yes. Her phone exploded with sound, shattering the moment. Patricia's name flashed across the screen, urgent and demanding. Owen pulled back with a quiet curse. Natalie answered. Darling, where are you? We're leaving tomorrow at noon. Please tell me you're packed. I'm packed, Mom. And Owen, he has appropriate clothes? Catherine Prescott has very particular standards. Owen will be fine. Good, because this weekend is important, Natalie. Julian will be there. His mother will be watching. You need to make it absolutely clear you've moved on. That you're happy. That Owen is. She paused, searching for words. That he's adequate. Adequate. The word stung more than it should. Owen heard it too, his expression hardening. I'll see you tomorrow, Mom. Natalie hung up. They sat in silence for a long moment, the almost kiss hanging between them like a ghost. I should take you home, Owen said finally. We both need rest before tomorrow. The drive back was quiet, comfortable but charged with awareness. At her building, Owen walked her to the door, under the streetlight. He looked tired and worried and heartbreakingly beautiful. Owen? Yeah. Thank you for all of this, for agreeing to something insane, for meeting my family, for being. She stopped, unsure how to finish. For being what? For being you. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Get some sleep, Nat. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. He left before she could say anything else, but she stood on her stoop, watching his taillights disappear. Her heart doing complicated things in her chest. Tomorrow they'd walk into his old world and her mother's desperate dreams. Tomorrow they'd perform being in love, in front of people who'd judge every word and gesture. The problem was, Natalie was no longer sure how much of it was performance, and from the look in Owen's eyes, neither was he. Friday arrived like an approaching storm, all dark clouds and electric tension. Owen picked Natalie up at noon sharp, driving the same old truck that had carried them to the lookout point. But today felt different. Today they were crossing into enemy territory, and both of them knew it. The drive to the Hamptons took 2 hours through autumn countryside, leaves turning gold and red against gray skies. They were quiet at first, the weight of what lay ahead pressing down like physical force. Then Owen reached over and took her hand, and some of the tension eased. Talk to me, he said. Tell me something real. Like what? Anything, your favorite book, your worst date before this fake one. What you wanted to be when you were 8 years old. Natalie smiled despite her nerves. Veterinarian. Until I realized it meant seeing animals in pain. Then accountant seemed safer. Safer for your heart, maybe. But is it what you wanted? No. I wanted to help people build things, dreams, businesses, lives. She paused. What did you want to be? An architect. I wanted to design buildings that made people feel something. Then I realized I'd have to work with people like my father, so I became a carpenter instead. Smaller scale, more honest. You're still designing. Just furniture instead of buildings. Maybe. He squeezed her hand. After this weekend, after the company thing is settled, I want to show you something. A project I've been working on. What kind of project? A surprise. A good one, I hope. They pulled over at a scenic overlook, the ocean spreading out below them like hammered silver. Owen cut the engine and turned to face her. This is it. Last chance to back out. Drive home. Tell your mother I got food poisoning or had a sudden crisis of conscience. Are you backing out? No. But I wouldn't blame you if you did. These people, Nat, they're going to look at you like you're something they scraped off their expensive shoes. They're going to smile while they tear you apart. And they're going to judge me, judge us, judge every single thing we say and do. I know. And you're still willing to do this? Natalie looked at the view, at the massive houses dotting the coastline below, monuments to wealth and power and inherited privilege. Somewhere down there was the Prescott estate, waiting like a gilded cage. My whole life I've been afraid, she said quietly. Afraid of disappointing my father, afraid of failing my family, afraid of being invisible, or worse, being seen and found wanting. But these past few weeks with you, I've felt braver. Like maybe I can be someone who doesn't apologize for existing. Owen's hand came up, cupping her face with a gentleness that made her chest ache. You never had to apologize. Not to anyone. Then let's go down there and prove it. He kissed her forehead, a gesture so tender it brought tears to her eyes. Then he started the truck and they descended toward the coast, toward the performance, toward whatever came next. The Prescott estate was not a house. It was a declaration of power. 3 stories of glass and stone and old money, sprawling across manicured grounds that probably required a full-time staff to maintain. Cars lined the circular drive, expensive and gleaming. People moved across the terrace. Champagne glasses catching afternoon light. Owen parked his beat-up truck between a Mercedes and a Tesla. The contrast was almost comedic. Ready? He asked. No, but let's go anyway. He came around, opened her door with old-fashioned courtesy, and helped her down. His hand settled on the small of her back, warm and steady. Together, they walked toward the entrance. Patricia appeared at the door before they could knock, her smile brittle and bright. She wore a cream silk dress that probably cost more than Natalie's monthly salary, her hair perfect, her makeup immaculate. Behind her, Nathan gave them a small wave, looking uncomfortable in a blazer and tie. Darling, you made it. Patricia kissed Natalie's cheek, then turned her evaluating gaze on Owen. Owen, how nice to see you again. Mrs. Morgan. Owen's manners were impeccable, his posture relaxed but respectful. Patricia's eyes traveled over him, taking in his simple button-down shirt, his clean jeans, the watch on his wrist that was neither expensive nor cheap. Natalie could see her mother calculating, judging, finding him wanting, but acceptable enough for her purposes. Come in, come in. Catherine's eager to meet you properly. They stepped into a foyer that looked like a museum, all marble and crystal and art that belonged behind velvet ropes. Natalie felt Owen's hand tighten on her waist, anchoring her. The main room was full of people in casual, elegant clothes, the kind of effortless style that required significant effort and money. Conversations paused as they entered. Eyes turned, assessing. Natalie felt herself starting to shrink, to make herself smaller, less noticeable. Then Owen leaned down and whispered in her ear, "Breathe, I've got you." His words steadied her. She straightened her spine, lifted her chin, and met the curious gazes with as much confidence as she could summon. A woman detached from the crowd and glided toward them. Catherine Prescott was in her early 60s, perfectly preserved, wearing casual linen that probably cost more than Natalie's car. Her eyes were cold and calculating, her smile sharp as a knife. Patricia's daughter. Yes, I see the resemblance. She turned to Owen. And you must be the boyfriend. Owen Fletcher, ma'am. Thank you for having us. How formal. How charming. Catherine's tone suggested it was neither. Patricia's been telling us all about you. A contractor, yes? How industrious. The word dripped with condescension. Natalie felt Owen tense beside her, but his expression remained pleasant, unbothered. I build things, it's honest work. I'm sure it is, though I must confess, I expected someone more, well, established, given the Morgan family's previous connections. It was a direct hit at Patricia's fall from grace, delivered with a smile. Patricia's face flushed, but she said nothing. My son Julian is around here somewhere, Catherine continued. I'm sure you remember him, Natalie. Such a shame that didn't work out. He's doing wonderfully now, of course, just back from a business trip to Singapore. Very important negotiations. I'm happy for him, Natalie managed. Yes, well, he has such a bright future ahead. But then, some people are born to lead, aren't they? Her gaze flickered to Owen. And others are born to follow, or build. As you said, Mr. Fletcher, honest work. Owen smiled, but there was steel underneath it. You know what they say, Mrs. Prescott. The people who build things are usually more interesting than the people who just inherit them. Shocked silence rippled through the nearby conversations. Catherine's eyes narrowed dangerously. How refreshing. A man who speaks his mind. I can see why Natalie finds you amusing. Before the tension could escalate further, a voice called out from across the room. Mother, stop terrorizing the guests before dinner at least. Julian Prescott emerged from the crowd, tall and blonde and impeccably dressed in clothes that screamed old money and new arrogance. He was handsome in that generic way of men who'd never had to develop personality because their bank accounts did the talking. Julian, darling, I was just welcoming Natalie and her companion. Owen, Julian said, extending a hand. His handshake was aggressive, holding on just a fraction too long, squeezing just a bit too hard. A dominance display so obvious it was almost pathetic. I don't believe we've been properly introduced. Owen Fletcher. Owen returned the grip with equal pressure, neither backing down nor escalating. Fletcher, any relation to the construction Fletchers? I am the construction Fletcher. Julian's smile was patronizing. How industrious. Must be satisfying, working with your hands. Very. Though I imagine you're equally satisfied with whatever it is you do. Finance, is it? Corporate law. Much more complex than hammering nails, I'm afraid. I wouldn't know. I've never tried it. Have you ever tried building something? Actually creating something from raw materials and vision? Julian's smile tightened. I create contracts, legal frameworks, the structures that allow society to function. And I create the actual structures people live and work in. Funny how we both think our work matters more. Natalie bit her lip to keep from laughing. Owen's expression was perfectly pleasant, but he just implied Julian's entire career was less essential than carpentry. From the look on Julian's face, he'd caught the implication. Well, Catherine interjected, ice in her voice. Dinner will be served shortly. Patricia, why don't you show your guests to their room? I'm sure they'd like to freshen up. Patricia led them upstairs, Nathan trailing behind with their bags. The room was enormous, all white linens and ocean views, and furniture that looked like it cost more than Natalie's education. This is lovely, Mom. Thank you. Yes, well, try not to embarrass me further. Patricia's pleasant mask had slipped. Owen, that comment to Catherine was incredibly rude. She was being rude first. Owen pointed out calmly. That's different. She's the hostess. She's allowed to be particular. Particular is one word for it. Patricia's face flushed. Look, I don't know what game you think you're playing, but these people are important. They could help Natalie, help our family rebuild our standing. So please, for this weekend, try to be less confrontational. I'll be respectful to anyone who shows respect first. How's that? Patricia looked at Natalie desperately. Talk to him. Mom, Owen was defending himself, and me. Catherine was being awful. She was testing you, both of you, and you failed. Or we passed by not rolling over. Nathan spoke up from the doorway. Seriously, Mom, they were fine. Catherine was being a snob. Patricia turned her frustration on her son. You don't understand how this works. Maybe that's a good thing. Nathan set down the bags. I'm going to my room. Nat, Owen, see you at dinner. After Patricia left, radiating disapproval, Natalie sank onto the bed. Owen moved to the window, staring out at the ocean. I'm sorry about my mother. Don't be, she's scared. Scared people lash out. He turned to face her. Though she's right about one thing, we failed Catherine's test. What test? She wanted to see if we'd cower, if I'd apologize for not being her kind of people, if you'd be ashamed of me. He crossed to the bed, sat beside her, but we didn't. We stood our ground, which means she's going to push harder. What do? We stay calm, we stay together, and we don't let them see us break. His hand found hers, laced their fingers together. Can you do that? With you? Yes. They sat in silence for a moment, the enormity of the weekend stretching before them. Then Owen stood, surveying the room properly. One bed, he observed. There's a couch. I'll take it. Owen, you're over 6 feet tall. That couch is tiny. I've slept in worse places. We can share. The bed's huge. We're adults. His eyes met hers. Dark and intense. Nat, if I get in that bed with you, I'm not sure I'll be able to keep pretending this is fake. The words hung between them, honest and dangerous. Natalie's heart hammered against her ribs. Then maybe we should stop pretending. The air in the room changed, charged with possibility and want. Owen took a step toward her, then another. His hand came up, hovering near her face, asking permission. Before she could grant it, a sharp knock sounded at the door. Dinner in 10 minutes, Patricia's voice called through the wood. Please be punctual. Catherine values timeliness. The moment shattered. Owen stepped back, running a hand through his hair in frustration. We should get ready. Natalie changed in the bathroom, slipping into the emerald dress Marco had tailored perfectly. When she emerged, Owen had changed into dark slacks and a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled to his forearms. He looked devastating. The kind of handsome that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with presence. You look beautiful, he said simply. You clean up pretty well yourself. He offered his arm and she took it. Together, they descended the stairs toward the dining room, toward the performance, toward whatever Catherine Prescott had planned next. The dining room table seated 20, crystal and china gleaming under chandeliers. Natalie and Owen were seated separately, several chairs apart, with Julian positioned directly across from Natalie. Catherine's doing, obviously, divide and conquer. Dinner was 7 courses of expensive food that tasted like ambition and old grudges. The conversations swirled around achievements and acquisitions, name-dropping and subtle brags. Natalie tried to follow along, tried to look engaged, but mostly she felt like an anthropologist studying an alien culture. Across the table, she could see Owen between 2 society women who kept touching his arm and laughing at things that weren't funny. He was polite but distant, his attention constantly flickering to Natalie. So Natalie, Julian said, his voice carrying across the table. How are you finding the evening? I know these gatherings can be overwhelming for people not used to them. The implication was clear. You don't belong here. Several people turned to watch her response. I'm finding it educational, Natalie said carefully. Oh, in what way? I'm learning a lot about the difference between having money and having class. Shocked silence. Then from down the table, Owen's quiet laugh. A few others joined in, including an older gentleman who clearly appreciated the barb. Julian's face flushed. I simply meant that our world can be intimidating to outsiders. Your world. Interesting phrasing. I wasn't aware society had membership cards. It doesn't. But it does have standards. Such as education, breeding, accomplishment. The things that matter. I went to state on a scholarship. My breeding is middle-class suburban, and my greatest accomplishment is keeping my family afloat after my father died. Do those meet your standards? The table had gone completely quiet now. Catherine's expression was unreadable. Patricia looked like she wanted to disappear, and Owen was watching Natalie with something that looked like pride. I didn't mean to offend, Julian backpedaled. Of course you did. You meant to put me in my place, to remind me that I'm the girl who didn't choose you, and therefore I must have made a terrible mistake. Natalie set down her fork. But here's the thing, Julian. I didn't make a mistake. I made a choice, and I'd make it again every single time. She met Owen's eyes across the table. His expression was open, vulnerable, and completely real. Not performance. Truth. Catherine cleared her throat. Well, how passionate. Perhaps we should move to the terrace for after-dinner drinks. The crowd dispersed, conversations resuming in shocked whispers. Natalie felt herself shaking with adrenaline and fear, and something that might have been exhilaration. She'd just told off Julian Prescott in front of 24 people. Her mother was going to kill her. A hand touched her elbow. Owen, somehow across the room and at her side in seconds. That, he said quietly, was the bravest thing I've ever seen. That was stupid. I just made everything worse. No, you made everything real. He pulled her close, right there in the dining room, with people still watching. And I have never wanted to kiss you more than I do right now. Then why don't you? Because when I kiss you, really kiss you, it's not going to be for an audience. Saturday dawned gray and cold, the ocean churning under storm clouds that matched Natalie's mood. She barely slept, hyper-aware of Owen on the couch across the room, of every shift and breath in the darkness. They'd returned from dinner in charged silence, both understanding that something fundamental had shifted between them, but neither willing to name it. Now, standing at the window in her pajamas, watching the Prescott grounds come alive with staff preparing for tonight's charity gala, Natalie felt the weight of what was coming settle in her chest like a stone. Morning, Owen's rough voice came from behind her. She turned to find him sitting up, hair messy, shirt wrinkled from sleeping in it. He looked tired and real, and nothing like the polished men downstairs who woke up perfect. "How'd you sleep?" she asked. "Didn't. You?" "Same." They stared at each other, across the elegant room, the truth sitting between them like a third presence. This wasn't fake anymore. Maybe it never had been. And tonight, at the gala, they'd have to perform being in love in front of 200 people while feeling it for real and pretending they weren't. Owen, a sharp knock interrupted. Patricia's voice, tight with barely controlled anger. "Natalie, we need to talk. Now." Natalie opened the door to find her mother vibrating with fury, still in her robe, her perfect composure cracked. "Do you have any idea what you did last night? I stood up for myself. You embarrassed me. You embarrassed our family. Catherine called me this morning. She's furious. She said Julian was trying to be welcoming and you attacked him. He was being condescending. He was being Julian. That's who he is. You smile, you nod. You make him think you're charmed. That's how this works." Owen appeared in the doorway. "With respect, Mrs. Morgan, that's not how anything should work." Patricia whirled on him. "This is your fault. You filled her head with ideas about being authentic and standing up for herself. But authenticity doesn't pay bills. It doesn't restore family reputation. It doesn't give my son opportunities. Maybe those things aren't worth what you think they cost," Owen said quietly. "Easy for you to say. You're a contractor. You have no idea what it's like to fall from grace, to lose everything. To watch people who used to respect you turn their backs. Actually, I do know. More than you could imagine." Something in his tone made Patricia pause. She looked at him more closely, suspicion dawning. "Who are you really? Because no contractor skates like you do. No carpenter has that kind of confidence around people like the Prescotts." Before Owen could answer, Nathan appeared at the end of the hallway, phone in hand, face pale. "Nat, you need to see this." He held out the phone. On the screen was a society gossip site with a photo from last night's dinner. The headline read, "Harrington heir spotted at Prescott estate with mystery woman." Below was a photo of Owen and Natalie, him whispering something in her ear, her looking up at him with undisguised affection, and in the caption, his full name, Owen Fletcher Harrington, son of Richard Harrington. Estimated net worth, family connections, the whole story. Patricia went very still. Then she snatched the phone, reading rapidly, her face cycling through shock, confusion, and finally, calculation. "You're a Harrington." "I was," Owen said. "I walked away 10 years ago. But you're back now, taking over the company. It says your father's stepping down." Patricia's eyes gleamed. "You let me think you were nobody. Let me worry about whether you were good enough for my daughter. When all along, you're one of the wealthiest men in the city. I'm a carpenter who happens to have a trust fund I don't touch. That's all. That's everything." Patricia's anger had transformed into excited energy. "Don't you see? This changes everything. Catherine can't look down on you now. The Prescotts will have to accept you, accept us." "Mom," Natalie said quietly, "you're missing the point." "What point? That your boyfriend is actually perfect? That this solves all our problems? That he's still the same person he was yesterday? The money doesn't change who he is." "Of course it does. Money changes everything." Patricia was already planning, pacing. "Tonight at the gala, everyone will know. You'll be the talk of the event. Catherine will be furious she didn't realize. Julian will be devastated. Oh, this is perfect. Mrs. Morgan, Owen's voice cut through her excitement like ice. I didn't come here to score points in your social war. I came here to help Natalie, and she doesn't need my family name to be worth something. She already is. Patricia stopped pacing. Of course she is, but the world doesn't work on intrinsic worth. It works on perception, and perception requires leverage. Then the world is broken. Perhaps, but we still have to live in it. She swept out, already pulling out her phone, probably to strategize with her friends. Nathan lingered, looking apologetically at them both. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cause drama. But the article went viral about an hour ago. By tonight, everyone will know. It's fine, Owen said, though his jaw was tight. It was going to come out eventually. After Nathan left, Natalie and Owen stood in the hallway, the weight of exposure settling over them. I'm sorry, Natalie said. I know you didn't want this. The attention, the association with your father's world. It's not your fault. Someone at dinner must have recognized me and tipped off the press. He ran a hand through his hair. The question is, what do we do now? We could leave. Just pack up and go home. Is that what you want? Natalie thought about it. About running away. About giving Catherine Prescott the satisfaction. About proving to her mother that she couldn't handle this world. No, I want to stay. I want to walk into that gala tonight and show them that your name doesn't change anything between us. Even though it does. You know it does. Does it? She moved closer. You're still the man who caught my laptop in a coffee shop. Who agreed to help a desperate stranger. Who builds beautiful furniture he's afraid to show anyone. The money is just money. It's not who you are. Owen's expression softened. You really believe that? I know it. He pulled her close, arms wrapping around her, and she pressed her face against his chest, breathing in sawdust and soap and safety. They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other in the quiet hallway while the Prescott house hummed with preparation for the evening ahead. Nat, Owen whispered into her hair. Tonight's going to be brutal. Once people know who I am, they're going to have questions. About why I hid it. About us. About whether this whole thing is real or some kind of publicity stunt. What do we tell them? The truth. That it started fake, but became real. That I fell for you somewhere between the coffee spill and now. He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. Because I did. Fall for you. Completely. Inconveniently. Probably stupidly. Natalie's heart hammered against her ribs. Owen, you don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know before tonight, before everything gets complicated, that whatever happens next, whatever the press says, or my father demands, or your mother schemes, this, what I feel for you, it's real. She stood on her toes and kissed him. Not the gentle, tentative almost kisses they'd shared before. This was sure and claiming and absolutely honest. His hands came up to cup her face, holding her like she was precious and breakable and essential all at once. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Owen rested his forehead against hers. We should probably not do that where anyone can see us. Probably not. Neither moved. The day passed in strange limbo. They avoided the other guests, spending hours walking the beach with the cold wind biting at their faces. Owen told her about his mother, about growing up watching her try to fit into a world that would never fully accept her. Natalie told him about her father, about the guilt she carried for introducing him to the man who destroyed everything. It wasn't your fault, Owen said for the 10th time. Intellectually, I know that, but knowing and feeling are different things. Yeah, they really are. By late afternoon, the Prescott estate was transformed. Lights strung across the terrace, tables draped in silk, a string quartet tuning instruments. Well-fun display, charity as performance art. In their room, Natalie put on the emerald dress, while Owen changed in the bathroom. When he emerged in a proper tuxedo, borrowed from Nathan's surprising stash of formal wear, her breath caught. He looked like he'd been born to wear it, commanding and elegant and completely himself. You look like a Harrington, she said. I look like an imposter in a costume. You look like you. He crossed to her, took her hand, kissed her knuckles with old-fashioned courtliness. Ready to face the firing squad? Ready to face it together. They descended the stairs to find the party already in full swing. The main room glittered with jewelry and ambition. 200 people who all knew by now that Owen wasn't just some contractor. The conversations paused as they entered, hundreds of eyes turning to assess and judge. Catherine Prescott materialized from the crowd, her smile sharp enough to draw blood. "Mr. Harrington, or should I call you Owen? I understand we've been laboring under a misapprehension." "Owen is fine, and it wasn't in this apprehension. I am a contractor. I just happen to also be a Harrington." "How delightfully democratic. I suppose we should all be honored you'd lower yourself to our level." "I wasn't lowering myself. I was being myself." "Yes, well, your father must be so proud. I heard about his health scare. Do send him my regards." The way she said it made it clear her regards were anything but kind. More people approached, some curious, some calculating, all of them reassessing Natalie now that they knew who Owen really was. She was no longer the girl who'd chosen a contractor over Julian Prescott. She was the girl who'd landed a Harrington. The distinction made her want to scream. Julian found them by the bar, his expression carefully neutral, but his eyes cold. "Congratulations, Owen. You must have had quite a laugh, watching us all assume you were nobody." "I wasn't laughing. I was being honest about what matters to me. Building things, not inheritance or connections. And yet here you are, back in the family business. How convenient. Life's complicated, as I'm sure your recent divorce proved." Julian's jaw clenched. It was a low blow, and Owen knew it, but Natalie understood. Julian had been circling all weekend, making digs, undermining. Sometimes you had to bite back. "At least I had the courage to commit in the first place," Julian said, rather than playing games with Winnin's emotions. "I'm not playing games. Aren't you? How long have you two really been together? Because that article suggested you only met a few weeks ago. So either you're using her for publicity, or she's using you for your money. Which is it?" The crowd had grown around them, sensing confrontation. This was it, Natalie realized. The moment where everything could shatter. Owen's hand found hers, held tight. "Neither. We met by accident. She asked for my help with a problem. And somewhere in the process of helping her, I fell in love with her." The words rang out across the suddenly silent terrace. Natalie's heart stopped. "In love," Julian repeated skeptically. "How touching and convenient." "Not convenient at all. Terrifying, actually, because she's brilliant and brave and deserves someone who sees her clearly. And I'm just a carpenter trying to be worthy of her." Tears pricked Natalie's eyes. Owen wasn't performing anymore. This was truth, raw and honest and absolutely real. "Well," Catherine's voice cut through the moment. "What a pretty speech. Shall we see if it holds up to scrutiny?" Before Natalie could process what that meant, Catherine gestured to the string quartet. They struck up a waltz. "Mr. Harrington, why don't you and Natalie open the dancing? Let's see if you're as graceful together as you claim." It was a test, a public examination of their relationship. If they fumbled, if they looked uncomfortable, it would prove Julian's accusations. That they were faking, using each other, performing for advantage. Owen turned to Natalie, extended his hand. "Dance with me." She took his hand, let him lead her to the center of the terrace. The crowd formed a circle around them, watching, judging. The music swelled, and Owen pulled her close. He was an excellent dancer, smooth and confident, leading her through the steps like they'd done this 1,000 times. But it wasn't his technical skill that made the moment magic. It was the way he looked at her, like she was the only person in the world who mattered. "I meant it," he whispered as they turned. "Every word. I love you, Natalie Morgan. Not the performance version, the real you." "I love you too," she whispered back. "So much, it scares me." "Good. I'd hate to be terrified alone." They spun across the terrace, the world blurring around them. When the music ended, they stood frozen in the final pose, eyes locked, breathing hard. Then Owen kissed her. Not a gentle kiss, not a performance. This was claiming and promising and absolutely honest. His hands in her hair, her arms around his neck. Both of them lost in each other while 200 people watched. When they finally broke apart, the terrace was silent. Then, slowly, someone began to clap. Then another. Then applause rippled through the crowd. Genuine appreciation for something real in a world of careful pretense. All except Catherine Prescott and Julian, who stood stiffly, their faces masks of barely controlled fury. Owen took Natalie's hand and led her off the terrace, through the house, out into the cool night air. They didn't stop until they reached the beach, the ocean roaring beside them, the lights of the party distant behind them. That was insane, Natalie said, still breathless. That was necessary. Owen pulled her close again. I'm done hiding, done pretending. I love you, and I want everyone to know it. Your father, the company, the media. It's all going to explode tomorrow. Let it explode. As long as I have you, I can handle anything. They kissed again under the stars, the ocean wind whipping around them, and Natalie felt something settle in her chest. This was real. This was right. This was worth fighting for. Her phone buzzed in her clutch. A text from Patricia. Come back inside, now. They returned to find chaos. Patricia's face was pale, her phone clutched in her hand. On the screen was a news alert. Richard Harrington hospitalized again, heart surgery required, son Owen rushing to his bedside. Owen went white. I have to go, now. I'm coming with you. Nat, you don't have to. I'm coming with you. That's not negotiable. They gathered their things in minutes. Nathan appeared with their bags already packed, bless him. Patricia tried to stop them, worried about appearances, but Natalie brushed past her. In Owen's truck, speeding back toward the city, neither spoke. His hands were white-knuckled on the wheel. She held one, anchoring him. At the hospital, they found Devon in the waiting room, tears streaming down her face. He crashed an hour ago. They're operating now. Owen pulled his sister close, and Natalie stood beside them. This family she'd somehow become part of, and prayed to anyone listening that Richard Harrington would survive long enough for Owen to make peace with him. Richard Harrington survived the surgery, but the recovery was long and brutal. 2 weeks passed in a blur of hospital rooms and hushed conversations with doctors. Owen practically lived at his father's bedside, watching machines breathe for the man who'd built an empire and lost a wife and never learned how to tell his son he was proud. Natalie visited when she could, bringing coffee and quiet company. But mostly she gave Owen space to navigate his complicated grief for a father who wasn't dead but might never be the same. And slowly, inevitably, the distance between them grew. It started small. Owen answering texts hours late, canceled dinners because the doctors needed to speak with him. The way he'd look at her with exhaustion and guilt and something that might have been regret. Like she was a dream he'd had during a fever. Beautiful but impossible to sustain in daylight. 2 weeks after the surgery, Richard was moved from ICU to a private room. The doctors said he'd recover, mostly, though he'd need months of physical therapy. The company couldn't wait that long. The board was demanding answers, and Owen, who'd spent 10 years running from his inheritance, now had no choice but to accept it. On a gray Tuesday afternoon, he texted Natalie, "Can you come to my apartment? We need to talk." The words every relationship feared. She took the subway to his building, her stomach churning with dread, and climbed the stairs to his door with the weight of endings pressing on her shoulders. Owen answered, looking like he hadn't slept in days. The apartment felt different somehow, less lived in, like he was already half gone. "Come in," he said, and his voice was distant, formal. She sat at his table while he made coffee they both knew neither would drink. The silence stretched between them, thick with everything unsaid. "My father's stepping down officially next week," Owen finally said. "I'm taking over. Full control of Harrington Properties, all the subsidiaries, the whole empire." "Okay. It means press conferences, board meetings, charity functions, every aspect of my life scrutinized." He set down his untouched coffee. "It means living in a world I walked away from, becoming the person I swore I'd never be." "You don't have to become him. You can do it differently." "Can I? Or am I just fooling myself that I can take his power without his poison?" Natalie reached across the table for his hand, but he pulled back. The rejection stung like a physical blow. "Owen, what's happening? I can't ask you to be part of this. The media attention, the expectations, the constant judgment. You saw what it was like at the Hamptons. That's my life now, forever. I can handle it. You shouldn't have to." His eyes were haunted. "You deserve someone uncomplicated. Someone who can give you a normal life, not this circus." "I don't want normal. I want you. You want the version of me that builds furniture and drinks coffee in Brooklyn. not the version that lives in a penthouse and wears suits and answers to shareholders. They're the same person. No, they're not. Owen stood, pacing to the window. I tried to be both, to keep one foot in each world, but it doesn't work, and I'm not willing to ask you to sacrifice your life for mine. The words he wasn't saying were louder than the ones he was. This was ending. He was ending it. Pushing her away before she could get hurt, before the pressure crushed them both, before love became obligation and resentment. So that's it? Natalie's voice cracked. You're just giving up? I'm letting you go. Don't pretend this is noble. You're running. Just like you ran from your father 10 years ago. Maybe I am, but at least this time I'm running alone, not dragging you down with me. He handed her an envelope. Inside was a check, $50,000, made out to her. What is this? Payment. For the bookkeeping services, for helping with the fake dating arrangement, for everything. Natalie stared at the check, at the casual way he'd reduced weeks of intimacy and honesty and love to a transaction. Rage bubbled up. Hot and cleansing. You're paying me off. I'm fulfilling our agreement. It was always business, remember? It stopped being business the moment you told me you loved me. I was caught up in the moment, the performance. It wasn't real. The lie was so transparent it was insulting. Natalie stood, shaking with fury and heartbreak. You're a coward. Your mother would be ashamed. Owen flinched like she'd struck him. Good, she wanted him to hurt the way she was hurting. She threw the check on his counter and walked out, leaving it there like the poison it was. She made it all the way to the street before the tears came, hot and angry and devastating. Behind her in the apartment, Owen stood frozen by the window, watching her disappear into the crowd, and knew he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life. But some mistakes couldn't be unmade. Some damage couldn't be undone. And maybe some people weren't meant for happy endings. The days that followed were mechanical. Natalie went to work, came home, stared at spreadsheets without seeing them. She'd given notice at her firm the day after the gala, riding high on Owen's declaration and her own courage. Now she had 1 week left before unemployment, no prospects, and a heart that felt like it had been put through a shredder. Nathan called every day, worried. Devin called too, angry at her brother and helpless to fix what he'd broken. Even Patricia called, surprisingly gentle, suggesting lunch. But Natalie couldn't face any of them. She couldn't face herself in the mirror, couldn't face the dream board on her refrigerator with its cutout pictures of cafes and independence. All of it felt hollow now, painted over with memories of Owen's smile and the way he'd looked at her like she was the answer to questions he'd been asking his whole life. 2 days after the breakup, she found the check in her mailbox. He'd sent it anyway. The bastard. She left it on her counter, unable to cash it, unable to destroy it. $50,000, enough to start her own business. The price of her heart. On Thursday evening, there was a knock at her door. She opened it to find Julian Prescott standing in the hallway, holding flowers and wearing an expression of calculated sympathy. I heard, he said, about you and Harrington. I'm sorry. How did you know where I live? Your mother gave me the address. She's worried about you. He offered the flowers. I wanted to see if you were okay, and to say that my offer still stands. What offer? Dinner. Getting to know each other properly. A real relationship, not whatever performance you and Harrington were staging. The audacity was breathtaking. Natalie almost laughed. Julian, we're not compatible. We never were. Because you were infatuated with a fantasy. But he showed his true colors, didn't he? Paid you off like a business transaction. Julian stepped closer, his cologne expensive and cloying. I would never treat you like that. I can offer stability, security, a real future. A future where I smile and nod and become whoever you need me to be. No thank you. Natalie, be reasonable. What are your other options? You quit your job. You have no prospects. How long before you're desperate enough to accept help? The ugly truth of it stung, but not enough to make her settle. I'd rather be desperate and alone than comfortable and miserable. Please leave. Julian's mask of sympathy slipped, revealing the entitled anger underneath. You're making a mistake, again. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. After he left, Natalie sat in her small apartment and admitted the truth to herself. Julian was right about one thing. She was running out of options. Her savings would last maybe 2 months. Then what? Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Hello? Natalie, it's Devin, don't hang up. I'm not interested in updates about Owen. Good, because I'm not calling about my idiot brother. I'm calling about a job opportunity. That got her attention. What kind of job? The gallery where I work is expanding. We're adding a business management division to help artists with finances, taxes, business planning. All the stuff creative people are terrible at. We need someone to run it. I immediately thought of you. Natalie's heart stuttered. Devin, I appreciate it, but I can't take charity. This isn't charity. This is me being selfish. I need someone good at this. Someone who understands small businesses and dreams and people who are building something from nothing. You're literally perfect for it. And before you ask, Owen doesn't know I'm calling. This is my project, my decision, my gallery. I don't know. Think about it. Come by tomorrow for an interview. Meet the owner, see the space. If you hate it, walk away. But at least give yourself the option. After Devin hung up, Natalie sat with the possibility. A job helping artists. Exactly what she'd dreamed of. But could she really work that closely to Owen's sister? Still reminders of him everywhere? The alternative was Julian's patronizing offers or crawling back to another corporate accounting job. Neither option made her soul sing. She'd think about it. Tomorrow. That night she couldn't sleep. Around midnight. She gave up and went to her regular coffee shop, hoping the familiar space would soothe her. The place was nearly empty. Just the barista and an older woman reading in the corner. Natalie ordered her usual and sat by the window, watching the city move past. This was where it had started, where Owen had caught her laptop and her attention, and eventually her heart. Excuse me. The older woman from the corner had approached. I'm sorry to bother you. But you look like you're carrying the weight of the world. And I'm a nosy old woman who can't help meddling. Despite everything, Natalie smiled. Is it that obvious? Heartbreak always is. Want to talk about it? And suddenly, inexplicably, Natalie did. She poured out the whole story to this stranger. The fake dating, the real feelings, Owen's noble sacrifice that felt more like abandonment. The woman listened without judgment, then said something that cut through all of Natalie's spiraling thoughts. Sounds like he's terrified. Fear makes people stupid. Makes them push away the very things they need most. So what do I do? Nothing. You can't fix someone else's fear. They have to do that themselves. She patted Natalie's hand. But you can decide what you're worth, what you'll accept and what you won't. That's your power. The woman left shortly after, and Natalie sat with those words. What was she worth? Not $50,000. Not Julian's patronizing security. Not Owen's tortured self-sacrifice. She was worth someone who fought for her, who chose her, who didn't run when things got complicated. And if Owen couldn't be that person, then she'd mourn him and move on. It would hurt. God, it would hurt. But she'd survive. She always had. Friday afternoon, Natalie went to Devin's gallery for the interview. The space was beautiful. All light and art and possibility. The owner was a sharp woman in her 50s who talked passionately about supporting emerging artists and building sustainable creative careers. The job was perfect. The salary was fair. And Devin made it clear this was completely separate from Owen. He doesn't even know this division exists yet, Devin said. And when he finds out, it'll be too late. You'll already be established. Natalie took the job, started the following Monday, spent her days helping painters and sculptors and photographers understand profit margins and tax deductions. It was fulfilling, in a way her corporate work had never been. But 3 weeks in, she was at an upscale restaurant with a client when she saw them. Owen and a woman, sitting at a corner table, her hand on his arm, laughing at something he'd said. The woman was beautiful, elegant, exactly the kind of person who belonged in Owen's world. And Natalie felt her carefully constructed composure crack. She excused herself, heading for the exit, but Julian was suddenly there, blocking her path. Of course he was. The universe had a cruel sense of timing. Natalie, what a coincidence. Julian, I'm working. Please move. I saw him too, with Victoria Ashford, old family friend. They're probably discussing the merger. But his eyes gleamed with malice. Or maybe it's more than business. They always did have chemistry. I don't care. Don't you? You look like you care very much. Before she could respond, Owen was there, having spotted them from across the room. His expression was carefully neutral, but his eyes betrayed him. He looked haunted, exhausted, miserable. Natalie. Owen. Julian smirked. Harrington, how's the corporate life? Everything you dreamed of? Owen ignored him, his attention fixed on Natalie. Can we talk? I don't think that's a good idea. Please, just 5 minutes. Owen, your date is waiting. Natalie gestured to the beautiful woman, watching them with open curiosity. She's not my date. She's from the legal team. We're working. It's none of my business what she is. Isn't it? Because I thought. He stopped himself, aware they had an audience. Please, 5 minutes. Against her better judgment, Natalie followed him outside to the alley behind the restaurant. The air was thick with the competing smells of garbage and expensive food. Reality and pretense mixing like everything in her life lately. What do you want, Owen? To apologize. For ending things the way I did. For the check. For being a coward. He ran a hand through his hair, disheveling the perfect corporate styling. You were right. I was running. And I've been miserable every day since. So you're miserable. That doesn't change anything. It changes everything. Because I'm miserable without you. Which means I was lying when I said I was protecting you. I was protecting myself. From what? From failing you, the way I failed my mother. From watching you get crushed by my world. From having to choose between you and the company, and inevitably choosing wrong. Natalie's anger was a living thing now, hot and righteous. You're so busy trying to protect everyone, you never stop to ask what they actually need. Your mother didn't need you to save her. She needed you to live, to be happy, to not waste your life drowning in guilt. And what do you need? I need you to fight for me, not protect me like I'm fragile, not sacrifice us for some hypothetical future pain. I need you to choose me, actively, deliberately, without reservations. I did choose you, at the gala, in front of everyone. And then you unchoose me 2 weeks later when it got hard. That's not love, Owen. That's performance. He turned to leave, done with this conversation, done with his tortured nobility. But his voice stopped her. You're right about all of it. I'm a coward and I ran, and I broke the best thing in my life because I was terrified. His voice cracked. But I'm here now. I'm fighting now. I don't know if it's too late, but I have to try. Natalie looked at him, really looked at him. At the man she'd fallen for in a coffee shop, who'd agreed to her insane plan. Who'd kissed her like she was oxygen and he was drowning. Try harder, she said, and walked away. Behind her, Owen stood in the alley, the smell of garbage and lost chances thick in his throat, and made a decision. He pulled out his phone and called his lawyer. I need you to pull the files on the Moore Street property block. All of it. Owen, that's a massive undertaking. That deal's been dead for years. Revive it. I want to buy the entire block. And I want it done in 3 days. That's impossible. Make it possible, whatever it costs. He hung up and looked at the restaurant, at the life he'd been living, at the corporate world that was slowly suffocating him. Then he thought about Natalie's face when she'd told him to fight harder. So he would. He'd fight harder than he'd ever fought for anything. And this time, he wouldn't run. 3 days later, Natalie stood in front of an old building on Moore Street. Confusion warring with curiosity. Devin had texted her an address with the message, "Trust me, just go." The block looked like it was mid-renovation, construction equipment scattered across the sidewalk, the smell of fresh lumber and possibility thick in the air. Through the ground floor windows, she could see someone working inside, silhouetted against afternoon light. Her heart knew before her brain caught up. That posture, those shoulders. Owen. She pushed open the door. Stepping into a space that was half-finished and entirely transformed. What had been a derelict building was becoming something beautiful. Open floor plan, exposed brick, huge windows letting in rivers of light. Owen turned at the sound, power drill still in hand, sawdust covering his shirt. He looked more like himself than he had in weeks, despite the exhaustion in his eyes. You came, he said. Devin was annoyingly insistent. What is this place? Your future, if you want it. He set down the drill, suddenly nervous. Let me show you. He led her through the space, explaining as they walked. Ground floor, designed for small business rentals, below market rate. Second floor, set up for a bookkeeping firm, with offices and meeting rooms and space for staff. Third floor, co-working space for artists and makers. Fourth floor, affordable housing. I bought the whole block 3 weeks ago, Owen said. Started the process right after the gala. Closed the deal 2 days after you walked away from me in that alley. Natalie's head spun. 3 weeks ago. You were already planning this while you were pushing me away. I know, I'm an idiot. I was trying to build you a future while simultaneously destroying our present. He moved to the window overlooking the street. I thought I could give you this and let you go. Give you the dream without the complicated man who came with it. That's not how it works. I know that now. Took me 3 weeks of being miserable. Victoria from legal telling me I was emotionally constipated, and Devon threatening to disown me, but I finally figured it out. Despite everything, Natalie almost smiled. Victoria thinks you're emotionally constipated? She's not wrong. But she's also happily married and was never my date, despite what Julian implied. Owen turned to face her fully. Nat, I've been an idiot, a coward. Everything you accuse me of. I pushed you away because I was terrified of failing you, of becoming my father, of trapping you in a life you didn't choose. So you chose for me instead. Yeah, which is exactly what I accused him of doing to my mother. He took a step closer, but here's what I should have done. I should have asked what you wanted, what you needed, whether you were willing to try building something together, even if it was complicated and messy and sometimes painful. And now? Are you asking now? I'm begging. Owen closed the distance between them, his voice raw with emotion. I'm begging you to give me another chance, to let me prove I'm not that scared man who pushed you away. I'm begging you to forgive me for being stupid enough to think I could live without you. Natalie wanted to hold on to her anger, to make him suffer the way she'd suffered. But looking at him now, at the exhaustion and hope and desperate love in his eyes, she couldn't. You built me a building. I built us a future, or the foundation of one, if you'll have me. Owen, I don't need grand gestures. I needed you to fight for me, to choose me. I'm choosing you now. I'm choosing you every day for the rest of my life, if you'll let me. He took her hands, holding them like lifelines. I don't want to give you my world, Nat. I want to help you build yours. I want to build it with you. The business, the life, all of it, together. What about the company? Your father? My father's recovering, getting stronger every day, and I made a deal with the board. I'll run the company, but on my terms. Ethical development, affordable housing initiatives, using our power for something other than profit. He squeezed her hands. I'm not my father, and I'm not going to let his legacy define mine. Our legacy. Our legacy, Natalie repeated softly. Is you want it, if you want me. Even though I'm damaged and complicated and sometimes catastrophically stupid about emotions. She pulled her hands free, and Owen's face fell. Then she reached up and cupped his face, feeling sawdust and stubble beneath her palms. You're an idiot. I know. You broke my heart. I know. I'm so sorry. And if you ever make unilateral decisions about our relationship again, I will actually kill you. Understood, does that mean? She kissed him. Hard and sure, and full of weeks of anger and longing and love that had never actually died. His arms came around her, pulling her close, and they stood in the unfinished building, surrounded by sawdust and second chances, kissing like they were making up for lost time. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Owen rested his forehead against hers. I love you, Natalie Morgan. Not the performance version. Not the version I think I should love. The real you. The one who calls me on my nonsense and dreams in spreadsheets and believes in underdogs. I love you too, Owen Harrington, the carpenter and the billionaire and everything in between. Just Owen, please. The rest is just noise. Just Owen, she agreed. They spent the rest of the afternoon in the building, Owen showing her the plans, Natalie already mentally organizing her business model. The bookkeeping firm would be hers to run, but connected to the building's mission. Help small businesses thrive, give artists financial literacy, build a community of creators and dreamers. What about your furniture? Natalie asked. Your designs? There's a workshop space in the basement. I thought maybe I could finally stop hiding them, start actually building some pieces, see if anyone wants them. They will. They're beautiful. As the sun set, painting the unfinished space in gold and amber light, Owen pulled a small box from his pocket. Not a ring box. Something else. I have something for you. Not a bribe or payment or anything transactional. Just something I've been holding on to. Inside was a key. Simple, brass, slightly worn. Key to the building? Natalie guessed. Key to my apartment. The real one. In Brooklyn, not the sterile penthouse. He looked nervous suddenly, vulnerable. I know it's too soon. I know I just got you back. But I want you to have it. So you know you're always welcome. Always home. Natalie took the key, feeling its weight. I'm keeping my apartment. Okay. We're going to split time between both places, your world and mine. I can do that. And when we eventually move in together for real, it's going to be a mutual decision. Equal partners. Absolutely. Owen pulled her close again. Any other conditions? Just one. No more running. When things get hard, we talk. We fight it out if we have to, but we don't run. Deal. And Nat? Yeah? Thank you. For giving me another chance. For seeing past my fear to the man I'm trying to be. You already are that man. You just needed to believe it. Over the next few months, the building took shape. Natalie hired 2 staff members for her firm, started signing clients, built exactly the business she dreamed of. Artists and small shop owners and people with more passion than capital, all getting help navigating the financial side of their dreams. Owen split his time between the company headquarters and the workshop in the building's basement. His furniture designs slowly filled the space, and when Devon suggested showing them at her gallery, he finally agreed. The opening was small and terrifying and sold out completely. Richard Harrington recovered slowly, spending months in physical therapy and rehabilitation. His relationship with Owen remained complicated, but there was effort now on both sides. Understanding growing where resentment had lived, and Patricia Morgan gradually, reluctantly, came to accept that Natalie had chosen her own path. It helped that the path led to stability and success, even if it wasn't the version Patricia had envisioned. She and Natalie still fought, still struggled to understand each other, but there was love underneath the friction now. Honest, messy, real love. Nathan graduated with honors, his scholarship having come through after all. He got a job at a nonprofit and moved into one of the affordable units on the building's 4th floor, becoming part of the community his sister had helped create. 1 year after the disaster of the Hamptons weekend, Natalie stood in the completed building, preparing for the grand opening. Ribbon across the door, press gathered outside, friends and family filling the lobby. Owen appeared at her elbow, wearing jeans and a nice shirt, his work boots polished but still distinctly him. He handed her scissors. Ready, partner? Ready. They cut the ribbon together, cameras flashing, applause echoing through the space. The sign above the door read, Morgan and Fletcher Building, building dreams, one small business at a time. Afterward, while guests toured the spaces and mingled over champagne, Owen pulled Natalie aside to the empty 2nd floor, to her office with her name on the door. I have something for you, he said, producing another small box. This time it was a ring box. Natalie's heart stuttered. Owen? Before you panic, it's not what you think. I mean, it is, but not today, not yet. He opened the box to reveal a simple band, silver with a single small stone. Sapphire. The color of my eyes, apparently, though I always thought they were just gray. They're gray with blue flecks, I noticed the first day. This is a promise. That I'm in this, completely. That I'm going to keep choosing you every single day. And someday, when the timing's right, I'm going to ask you properly. With a speech, and probably embarrassing tears, and a ring that's more traditional. He took the band from the box. But for now, I just want you to know you're it for me. You're home. Natalie let him slide the ring onto her right hand, feeling the weight of the promise, the future, the love that had survived performance and panic and pain. I'm going to hold you to that speech. It better be good. It'll be terrible. I'll probably forget half of it and improvise badly. Perfect. He kissed her there, in her office, in their building, surrounded by the life they'd built together. And Natalie felt something settle in her chest. Not the absence of fear or doubt or complication, but the presence of something stronger. Partnership, trust, love that had been tested and survived. Outside, the city hummed with evening energy. Millions of stories, millions of dreams, millions of people trying to build something meaningful from the chaos of existence. But in that moment, in that room, with sawdust still in the air, and coffee growing cold on the desk, and Owen's arms around her waist, theirs was the only story that mattered. Thank you, Natalie whispered. For what? For catching my laptop that day in the coffee shop. Owen laughed, the sound full and genuine and completely happy. Best reflexes I ever had. Best decision I ever made, asking a stranger for help. It wasn't a decision, it was fate. You don't believe in fate. I didn't, but then I met Yi, and suddenly impossible things started feeling inevitable. She turned in his arms, kissing him slowly, savoring the moment. Below, the party continued. Her mother was probably networking. Nathan was definitely charming the artists. Devin was absolutely taking credit for bringing them together. Let them. This moment, this quiet space between chaos and celebration, belonged to Natalie and Owen alone. Come on, she said finally. We should get back before Devin sends a search party. One more minute. I want to remember this. You, here, in the space we built. Happy. I am happy. Terrifyingly, completely happy. Good. I'd hate to be terrified alone. They returned to the party, hand in hand, and no one mentioned that they'd disappeared, or if they did. They smiled knowingly and said nothing. Because some things were obvious. Some love was visible, even to people who weren't looking. That night, after the guests had left and the building was quiet, Natalie and Owen sat on the floor of her office, backs against the wall, exhausted and exhilarated. We did it, Natalie said. We did. What comes next? More of this. Building, growing, fighting occasionally because we're both stubborn. Making up because we're both terrible at staying mad. Sounds complicated. Sounds perfect. And it was. Not perfect in the fairy tale sense. Not without struggle or doubt or hard days. But perfect in the way real things are perfect. Flawed and beautiful and absolutely worth fighting for. Outside, the streetlights flickered on, casting warm light across the building's facade. The sign glowed against the darkening sky. Morgan and Fletcher. Equal partners. Equal dreamers. Inside, two people who'd started as strangers, become performers, and ended as partners, sat in comfortable silence, planning their future and living their present and grateful for the coffee spill that had brought them together. Hey, Owen? Yeah? I love you. I love you too, Nat. Always have, always will. And in a city of millions, in a building built on second chances, that was enough. That was everything. That was home.